Hello, darlings. You've all heard of Marilyn Monroe. Some of you know Bridget Bardot. Well, now it's time for the Cognac Show. I said cognac, ooh, ooh. I said cognac, ooh, ooh, ooh. I'm your bubbly blonde, fabulously dressed to impress. One-of-a-kind girl. I was brought into this world wrapped up in pearls. I love to mingle, though my husband reminds me I'm not single. I meet and greet both the famous and the elite. I ride in limousines, drinking the finest champagne, wearing furs, dazzling diamond jewelry. A girl can't complain. I live the upscale life, dining in the finest restaurants, eating the best caviar for free. And no matter how much I enjoy myself, they can't charge me.
We're back now. One of the great kicks of doing the Tonight Show is the chance to present some new talent. And I'm glad you're in a crazy mood tonight, because this is a young man that we discovered at one of our regularly scheduled auditions. This is his first appearance on television. He's very clever, somewhat warped. Which is, if you're going to do comedy, you should be a little bit warped, I think. Would you welcome for the first time on the Tonight Show, Mr. David Brenner. David?
Warped. I saw something interesting the other day. I was driving in New Jersey, and I got lost, and I always get lost in New Jersey. That whole state looks the same to me. Well, I think they have 7 people and 9 trees, and they keep moving it down the road.
Hello, darlings. Welcome back. I'm Cognac Wellerlane, and we are here at the Bay Street Theater. And I'm here with comedian Mr. David Brenner. Welcome to Cognac's Corner.
Oh, I like your corner and I like cognac.
And you like me, right?
And I like you, absolutely, without a doubt.
Yes, darling. And this is so exciting for you. Now you're going to be appearing at the Bay Street Theater. And is this like your first time appearing at the theater?
No, I was here last July, and I just want to comment on that. Anyone who saw me last year and is a fan, and they're not coming this year because they say, oh, well, we saw them last July, I'm doing an entirely new show. So there will be no repeated jokes.
No repeated jokes?
Because I wanted to come back, and I knew to come back, I should do an entirely different show, so people will come to see me. So I am.
Well, you're hilarious. Why wouldn't they? You're a funny
knows?
guy.
David,
I want to talk to you. You grew up in a rough town. Lots of
Philadelphia.
crime. Philly, you grew up in a crime-ridden town in Philadelphia. How does a kid find comedy in a crime-ridden town?
I think actually it's harder to find comedy in an easygoing, suburban, peaceful, non-criminal town. That's why there are very few Protestant comedians. It's all Jews, Italians, blacks, Hispanics. It's the guys who grew up rough. Because the Protestants, what are they going to joke about? Like, geez, you know, this tooth bothered me a little. I mean, what do they have to talk about? I don't know what Protestants talk about anyway in life. So, of course, the guys who were held back by poverty and crime and hardships, and, you know, and crooked teeth and getting in trouble all the time, they're the ones who find humor as a buoyancy. It lifts us up and gets us out. And that's what humor is for people. If you want to forget your troubles, there's no better way of forgetting your troubles than laughing. It's better than listening. Music is great too, but laughing actually helps you.
And they're funny, those people.
Yeah, they're very funny.
They're very funny. So now you started out in Philly, and you started telling jokes, and from that you went where?
Well, I actually started out as a writer, producer, director of documentaries for television. And then I went into comedy just as a lark. It's now a 40-year lark. This is one of the longest lasting larks in the world. And I just started hanging around comedy clubs, and I went on the Tonight Show.
That's how you got your big break with Johnny Carson, right?
Yeah, I went on the Tonight Show, and I was going to quit the next day doing comedy because I only wanted to do it a little over a year. And I only had $3 in my name. And I went on the show, And by the end of that next day, that working day, I had $10,000 worth of job offers.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I was on my way. I got in. Buddy Hackett saw me. I didn't know. He saw me, put me on the stage at the Congo Room in Sahara Hotel in Vegas with Sonny and Cher were the closing act. Frankie Avalon was the opening act. And then Robert Goulet's manager agent saw me. He put me in with Robert Goulet. That led to all the other stars. Carson invited me back the next week. The Ed Sullivan people saw me on the first Tonight Show. They got me on what turned out to be the last live Ed Sullivan show. All that from one appearance.
Just from that,
Yeah.
I remember reading that about Johnny Carson. If you were on his show,
That was it.
it.
You had it made.
You were a star.
Yeah.
Right after Johnny Carson, you
Right.
were a star.
Yeah, well, first of all, instead of like now, maybe 2-3 million people a night watch the Tonight Show or Letterman, then 11-13 million people watch the show. And besides that, all the people in show business who were anybody were watching the show. So if you scored a home run, you hit a home run that night, you hit it with the right people in the stands watching it clear the fence.
I remember watching you as a kid. I used to watch you. I used to love you. I thought you were hilarious. Hilarious.
I want to tell you something. If you were around when I was a kid, I would have watched you too.
Audience, what was it like? What was Johnny Carson like?
Well, I'll tell you something interesting. John, I really didn't know John. I did 158 appearances. I didn't know him any better on number 158 than I did on the first one, except to tell you that he was generous, he was intelligent, he was kind, he supported you, and he was a remarkable man. But he had a little clique of friends, Stephen Eady, Gourmet.
Yes.
Just a little clique of friends. Played tennis, they played cards, they went on a sailboat. Other than that, he was friendly. I bumped into him once. We had dinner together. Because I bumped into him. Come on, we had dinner together. Or I went to see him in Las Vegas, and I spent like 3 hours in the dressing room hanging out and kidding with him. But he would never call me, David, when are you coming into town? Let's hang out.
He wasn't that type of friend.
No, he wasn't that, he was...
I heard a lot of stories about him. I heard that he even had like a dark side. He was the type of guy you just didn't cross. He would do you that favor. He would go that extra mile for you. He'd help you out, but don't ever cross him.
Well, he was very mafioso in that way.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, because-
I loved
yeah.
you. You said mafiosa. I'm Italian. Did you know I was
Yeah,
Italian?
I knew you were Italian. Sure, I could tell. I grew up in South Philadelphia. I used to see you walking around, going by the luncheonette, making all the boys whistle. I remember those days. But he was that way because it's just like when the mob ran Las Vegas.
Yeah.
As long as you didn't cross the line, they treated you were gold. And they treated everyone who came there that way as long. I'll give you an example. There was a guy, Torres, he ran the Riviera, and Eddie Torres. Everyone thought he was Italian. They weren't sure. He was a Sephardic Jew, but he looked Italian. He talked like he was Italian, very sophisticated guy, educated, you could tell, good dresser. He didn't mess around with entertainers. He didn't care about them, but for some reason he took a liking to me. I opened up in the room there, and I came out after the opening night show, and he was sitting there with 3 guys overlooking the casino, seeing the action. And he called me over and he said, "How'd it go tonight, David?" I said, "Oh, it was great. It was sold out." I said, and a great audience. I said, "Great." He said, "Well, you let me know if there's anything you need." And I said to him, "Well, actually, I drink champagne now, so if I had a case of champagne in the dressing room," meanwhile, I had a whole bar there and hot and cold food there every night. I said, "I'd really appreciate it." And all of a sudden, his eyes got ice cold, and he said to me, "I pay you enough money to buy your own champagne." I had crossed the line. We had made a deal. My deal did not include a case of champagne. You see, I was wrong. Next night I'm walking out, he spots me. "David." I thought, "Oh God, here it goes again." And I went over and he said, "How'd it go tonight?" I said, "Well, Eddie, better than last night. The show was better than last night." I said, "And by the way, Eddie, if you're ever in a mood like for a flute of really cold champagne, I got a few bottles in the fridge and I got the case there on the floor." So he laughed and everything was fine. I had crossed the line, but then I came back.
You made amends, darling.
Yeah, exactly.
You made
Right.
amends.
It's respect. It's the whole
Out of
idea of respect.
respect.
It's all respect.
Yeah, well, that's Italian people. That's what it's
Yeah,
all about.
always, I grew up with this. And mostly, Sicilian. My friends were Sicilian to this day.
But you're
And-
Jewish
Yeah, I'm
all the way
Jewish, yeah,
around,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And I knew it was always that thing. You know, you got to respect me. And it was very, very important. And it was very important. If you shook hands, you had to keep that. That was your bond. And I worked
And
on...
your word was your bond, too.
Absolutely.
Not today. Today,
Oh,
forget it.
please.
Your word doesn't mean anything
Please,
anymore.
your word means that. Your word is a feather in the wind.
I said cognac, ooh, ooh. I said cognac, ooh, ooh, ooh. I'm a bubbly blonde, fancy dress to impress. One of a kind girl. It's been a Crybaby Productions, darlings.